introduce our honorable guest, Mr. Gaurav Dua. Sir is a Director and Practice Leader Technology, Media and Telecom, TMT Practice at CRISIL, GR&A. At CRISIL, he has handled diverse assignments across verticals related to competitive intelligence, strategy planning, market entry strategy, etc. Prior to joining CRISIL, Sir was an industry analyst, program manager with Frost & Sullivan, a leading global consulting firm where he worked on consulting assignments spanning across the North America and the Asia Pacific region. His focus area at Frost included e-business applications, CRM, SCM, business intelligence, managed network services, IT outsourcing, e-learning, ASPs, IDCs, VPN, and other related networking technologies. Prior to Frost, he worked as a business analyst with HCL Infosystems, one of the largest IT groups in India, and Headstrong, a US-based IT consulting firm focusing on TMT sector. His key responsibilities at CRISIL include: first, leading and managing multiple teams and consulting and research assignments, currently leading and managing around 120 to 130 consultants and analysts spread across various locations, both domestic and international. Working on research assignments for clients spread across various verticals such as telecom, high-tech, pharmaceuticals, insurance, healthcare, manufacturing and utilities, etc. Developing, maintaining and fostering client relationships. Headed the delivery for the professional services consulting vertical, currently heading the delivery for one of the largest global telco client, executing assignments in the areas such as product evaluation, opportunity assessment, competitive intelligence, product benchmarking, market positioning, product feasibility and launch, etc. Sir has been extensively quoted in some of the leading international journals and has published around 35 articles in leading publications such as the New York Times, CIO Asia, Economic Times and FE. He has also had speaking opportunities at various international IT, telecom and analyst conferences. During his stint at Frost & Sullivan, Sir also won the Best Technology Analyst Award in the APAC region for the year 2003. He holds an MBA with dual specialization in marketing and IT and a bachelor's in management science degree. I would now request our honorable guest, Mr. Gaurav Dua, to share with us few words of wisdom. Sir, podium is all yours.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thanks a lot to all of you for taking out time, and thanks to the Institute, to Balaji sir for inviting me for this forum. I just thought I won't have any formal presentation per se, because I want to keep this session more interactive, and I'm sure you will go through a lot of presentations in the next 2-3 days. So I would rather keep the discussion more open-ended than share with you something which is too formal. But nevertheless, I'll talk about, I'll spend some time talking about the theme as far as this event is concerned, the leadership bit, and then I'll open it for Q&A. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. So I'm sure you must have heard about CRISIL. We have been associated with this institute for last 7-8 years now. And I've been to this institute multiple times. So every time I come, I see something new coming up in this institute, be it in regards to infrastructure, be it in regards to the faculty members and so on and so forth. So I've really seen this institute grow, in the last couple of years. So really, kudos to the faculty, to Balaji sir, to really take this institute in the right direction. I think as far as the theme is concerned, the leadership, I think it's a very, very important topic. And there are a couple of things that I wanted to share with you based on my experience working with various organizations, based on what I have learned, in the last 15, 16 years of my professional career. I think the most critical thing that I feel, there are 8 to 10 traits that make you a successful leader. So it is very important you have the right foundation, in this next 2 years. I'm sure most of you must be in the second year, but the 2 years that you have got a foundation in this institute would give you good understanding about the basic concepts, the academics and all that will be taken care of. But I think the moment you step out and move to the corporate world, it's a different world altogether. So you have to be prepared for the reality. You have to be extremely competitive if you want to make a mark in the industry. I think the most critical thing, the first element that I feel you should really focus on is a communication skills, For a successful leader, you should be able to communicate what you feel, what you think, and very succinctly. So I think you need to really, really focus a lot on enhancing your communication skills. And when I talk about communication skills, it refers to both the written and the oral communication. So when you sit for your interview, when the placements start, the first impression that a person forms about you is how you speak. Yeah. So your academic knowledge, your understanding of concepts, everything comes later. So the first few sentences that you say in that interview or in any discussion makes you feel that, okay, this is the person that I'm looking for or not. So make sure, I'm sure all of you have come from good backgrounds, but continue to enhance your communication skills, because that will take you really ahead whatever you do in your career. That's number one. The second thing is, focus on the analytical skills. No matter what field you choose, be it finance, be it marketing, be it research, be it consulting, your analytical skills is something that will be tested time and again. So I think it is very, very important you have the concepts in place, but how you really interpret those concepts, how you really interpret the data and derive meaningful insights from that data is very, very important. So even if you are making a presentation to your boss or to your manager when you join any organization, he would like to see, if he has given you a mandate, how you have come back and presented your thoughts and understanding on that topic. So it may not be just specific to a research or a consulting industry, it is applicable across. If you're working in a financial company, the same thing will apply. If you're working in a technology company, the same thing will apply. So make sure that you enhance your analytical skills. Try to question whatever you're reading. What does it mean? What does it make sense? And try to interpret and try to share it in the best possible manner. So that's the second thing. The third thing I would mention is your understanding of concepts. So you may be specializing in different fields, be it telecom, be it IT, be it marketing and so on and so forth. But what is really important is what you have learned, how good you are at it. So, if you are studying marketing, it should not be that, you know the basic concepts, but the moment he tries to probe you level 2, level 3, you're not able to answer those questions. So whatever you do, whichever field you choose, make sure you make the best use of it, and enhance your understanding, not just reading your academic books, but I'm sure you have a fabulous library out here. Look at the trends, what's happening out there in the global market. So when I was an MBA student, the way I used to write my papers was, one was the academic knowledge, but on top of that I used to supplement with the global trends. I'm sure you must have read Philip Kotler and all these marketing journals, but what is important is that if you are reading a concept, how you try to make it applicable in the real world, and that will only come if you read the journals which are out there. So right from your top-notch magazines and journals like Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan Management Review, and so on and so forth. There are tons of those journals out there. Make sure you read, and that will keep you abreast with the global trends, what's happening outside India as well. So that's the third thing I would like to say. The fourth thing is around journal awareness. That's very, very important, no matter what field you are in. So it should not be that if you are a finance student, you should only know who's the finance minister of India. You should even know who's the defense minister. You should know who's the RBI governor. You should know who's our HRD minister, and so on and so forth. So the thought, what I'm trying to leave you behind is, irrespective of which field you are in, wherever you go, whenever you sit for any interviews, you will be tested in terms of your understanding of the markets, Indian markets, global markets, and it should be across sectors, you know. So you should know about the stock markets, you should know how many stocks make BSE Sensex, and you should even know, you know, what Airtel is doing in India, what are their rampant plans, what are the kind of investments that they are making. So what I'm trying to say is that read as much as you can. Keep yourself abreast with the latest developments so that you're not outdated. I think that's the most critical thing, yeah? So that's about the journal awareness and your understanding of the markets. The next important aspect is, as everyone says, there is no substitute for hard work. So that goes without saying. You need to be really committed in what you are doing. Just because you've got admission in a good B school doesn't mean that you'll land up in a good job. It's very, very competitive. I'm sure all of you would have guessed it by now. And there are tons and tons of B schools out there in the country, right? So when any company comes and hire, they want to hire the best. And the numbers are very selected. You know, it could be 2, it could be 3, it could be none. So you have to make a mark. And how can you make a mark? You know, by doing some of these things that I talked about. So make sure that, you know, you are really committed and continue to put in your hard work, because at the end of the day, it will pay you. It will pay you. So that much you should be rest assured, you know. So that's another important element. The other thing is, a lot of times I've seen students, once they're in the B school, they may not give too much of focus on the acads. And they may say that, okay, fine, even if we get a CGPA of, you know, 5 or 6, I'm just saying out of a score of 10, that should be okay. But having said that, as I said again, it's very important that you're academically very, very sound, and your marks should speak for itself. So even before you sit for an interview or a discussion, you'll be shortlisted a lot of times by a lot of companies based on what you have scored, not just in your B school, but in your previous, you know, degrees, be it your graduation, 10th, 12th, and so on and so forth. So ensure that, you know, you score good marks and you are amongst the toppers. If not amongst the topper, at least the brightest and the best amongst your peers out here, because that will really help you at least to make the first filter or make the first cut, you know, in the evaluation. So don't compromise on your studies. You know, ensure that, you know, you are putting in whatever effort to make it to the toppers list, you know. So that's there. The other thing is, you know, in order to be a successful leader, you need to be very ambitious. And when I say ambitious, there should not be any boundaries, you know. So you should really think big. And as most of the successful leaders have said, unless you think big, unless you dream out of the box, you will never achieve it, yeah. So it's very important that you have high aspirations, and you should never consider yourself, and I see this because we go to the top B schools in the country, right from IIM Ahmedabad to any B school that you can think of, the top brackets. Now, and I've seen the difference, you know, when you go and speak to a student in IIM Ahmedabad, the way he'll come across just because he is in the best B school in the country, it's a very different outlook, right? But having said that, my belief is, I think you should not benchmark yourself against anyone. You should set your own benchmarks, right? Despite the fact that you may not be in the top A category, so to say, B schools, you may still, you know, beat these guys in the corporate world. And there are umpteen examples, you know, that I have in my organization where I work with some of these best brains. And there are people from your institute as well, I can say, who are working with us. And some of these guys are performing equally well or even better than some of the B schools that I mentioned, you know. So my recommendation to all of you out here is that never have that, you know, thing in your mind that we are not amongst the best, you know, we are not in the best or the A category B schools, you know. I think the moment you have that, you will never be able to make big in life. So take off that from your head and start dreaming big and start thinking big, you know, because all you need is the right attitude, the right amount of dedication, and, you know, you will see for yourself 10, 15 years down the line where you land up, yeah. So that's the other thing I would like to mention. another important aspect, the next point is around the teamwork. Now, you need to be a very good team player to be successful in the corporate world. You need to be a good leader, that goes without saying, but most of the businesses that we are in today work in teams. Yeah, what that basically means is, and even in that team, I think it is important to know what role you'll play. You may still emerge as a leader in that team, but at the end of the day, you need to be a good team player. You should be able to take your team along for any project that you're working on, because if your team is along, you can do much more than being an individual contributor. So you need to understand what are the best practices to be a good, successful team leader. Yeah, and start working on those. I'm sure you have enough opportunities in your college wherein you work in groups, you make presentations for your papers and all those things, right? Even those small experiences will teach you a lot, and try to play multiple roles out there, you know, how to lead a small team, and that actually will help you when you enter the corporate world. Yeah. So that's the seventh, eighth point that I wanted to talk about. The other important thing I think some of the other speakers also talked about is integrity. I think that's very, very important. In today's corporate world, corporate ethics means a lot. So you need to be really, really honest. So integrity makes a big difference, you know. You may not be the star performer, but if you have this trait, it will really help you in the long run. So never compromise on values, because as I said, organizations today are becoming extremely stringent when it comes to corporate ethics, yeah. So make sure that you hold this trait with you. The other thing is, you know, related to the self-confidence. I think that's very, very important. So whenever you're going, meeting people, you know, and especially in the corporate world, you'll be playing multiple roles. You'll be interacting with a lot of senior people across different divisions. So that self-confidence is very, very important, you know. And again, don't have that thing in your mind, oh, I'm a fresher, I don't have any experience, should I share my views with a senior, right? The moment you have that, you'll always hold back, and you'll always be in a mode wherein you are receiving information, you know, from the other side, rather than you sharing your views and thoughts about it. So make sure that, you know, you don't have that kind of a thing in you. Be very, very self-confident in whatever you do, and that should come out in your personality when you're talking to people, when you're meeting people, when you're greeting people, when you're making presentations. You should sound as someone who is an expert. You should sound as someone who has really a good hold or a command in whatever you are doing. Yeah. So that's the another important trait. The other important aspect which really matters today is how well you are read. And again, out here, I'm not really talking about, you know, your, so to say, B school, you know, books that you have, you know, so you should be really, really well read, be it in terms of keeping abreast of what's happening out there, all the leading newspapers and journals that you get. Make sure that you take out time every day to really spend some time, because that really is going to be a key distinguishing factor, you know, which will, you know, make you competitive. I'll be very honest, I think all of you today are sitting out here, but the moment placement season starts, a lot of you will be competing against each other, right? So you may be the best of the friends, but at the end of the day, only one of you may land up that job, right? So, so what I'm trying to say is that you need to be very competitive. I'm not saying compromise on ethics, but be very, very competitive. And how you prepare yourself, you know, will make the difference at the end of the day. So that's another important aspect. Last but not the least, I think, which I firmly believe is humility. No matter how big you become, no matter where you go, I think you need to have this trait of humility, because as a successful leader, you know, people aspire to look upon those leaders, you know, who are, you know, very Humility is very, very important from that perspective, yeah. So keep these elements in mind. So these are some of the things, 10, 12 things that I've felt, which I have learned, which I have imbibed, which I have followed throughout my career. And I still continue to learn, I still continue to grow, I still continue to keep myself abreast, you know, with what's happening out there in the market. Never be complacent. I think that's very, very important. Just because you've got a job also doesn't mean that, you know, that's the end of it, right? That's the beginning of your corporate career. So don't be complacent, really work hard, really struggle, and I'm sure you'll see the light at the end of the day. So that's where I'll stop. I think I've spoken quite a lot. I would just open the floor for any questions that you may have, and I'll be more than happy to answer. Okay, okay. Sorry, ma'am, I didn't get you.
Don't they want to, don't they want to know what CRISIL is going to
Right.
look for when they apply for management trainees job to you?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so I didn't talk about CRISIL that much, but yeah, I think when CRISIL goes and hires from the B schools, various B schools across the country, I think there are a couple of traits that we typically look in a candidate. The first, and a lot of these things I've already talked about, but just to sum up, first I think conceptual knowledge, whatever fields you are in, be it telecom, marketing, finance, make sure that your fundamentals are very strong, because that's something that you'll be really tested on. I think that's number one. The second thing is your analytical skills, how you're able to really analyze and derive meaningful things from abstract information. So in the real life also, the kind of projects that we work on are very abstract. A lot of times our client will come back and give us a project which makes no sense, but at the same time they are looking for a solution at the end of the day. So your ability to analyze these complex situations will play a big role, you know. And if some of you are, I don't know if you have analytics as a course out here, but if you're really good in analytics tools and techniques, so things like SPSS, SAS, a lot of other BI tools, I think that's going to be very helpful. But even if you don't have experience on that, just strong analytical skills will make a big difference, you know. So that's the second thing I would like to mention. The third thing that we really want to focus on when we go and hire people is your attitude towards work. So we need really people who are committed and dedicated. So if you're looking for, let's say, a career in sales and marketing, then of course CRISIL is not the place to be, because we are a analytical driven organization. So we really look for people who are very committed, who are very dedicated, and who have passion for doing a lot of this, so to say, deep dive research and analysis, you know. So that's the third dimension that we typically look at. The fourth is, of course, as I said, communication skills. That again is very important, because a lot of you, probably not immediately, but 2 years, 3 years down the line, will be in a client-facing role. And when I say client-facing role, it may not be just restricted to India. So you'll be dealing with clients across geographies. You may be expected to travel abroad for presentations and all those type of things. Now out there, we really need people who are presentable, who can communicate the value proposition that CRISIL stands for, you know. So for that, we really look for people with good communication skills. Then of course, strong academics. As I said, don't compromise on your studies. Whatever you have done in the last few years, you can't unchange it. But make sure that this 1 or 2 years out here, you make the best use of it, and strive to be amongst the toppers, strive to be amongst the top leaders within your batch. I think that's something that we always look for. Last but not the least is general awareness, your knowledge of the markets that I talked about, you know. And make sure that you're very well read. And this doesn't happen overnight, let me tell you. If you have already been doing it for last year or so, then that's great. But even if you haven't started, there's never a time to start something which is too late. So you can even start it as early as today, and make sure that you practice it over a couple of months. Because before the placement season kicks in, at least you'll be, you know, well placed, you know, on those dimensions. So broadly, I would say these are the 4-5 things that we look for. And I don't know if there's anything else I can talk about it, but yeah, broadly that's what it is, Professor.
Thank you so much. And one more question, sir.
Yeah.
What do you think, how important it is for a student to have knowledge about the other functions? For example, majority of our students are specializing in marketing.
Right.
So the sensitivity to numbers, understanding of balance sheet,
Yeah.
how do you think, to what extent is it important? Do you also see that when you pick up a candidate?
Yeah, so I would say not to a great extent, because obviously if a person is specializing in marketing, we'll not be really testing him or her on financial skills. But having said that, I think basic conceptual knowledge is important, and I'm sure there would be some papers related to finance anyways as part of the curriculum, because I think that's important. And when I'm saying I'm not, because we do really high-end financial modeling, derivatives, fixed income research, and I'm not talking about that stream at all. All I'm talking about is basic understanding. So what's the difference, just to give you an example, what's the difference between a balance sheet and a P&L? Yeah, what is the cash flow? What is the working capital? What are ratios? What is return on equity? So what I'm saying is at least have that basic understanding, because even let's say you're not a financial professional, when you do some of the projects that we work on, at times that understanding really helps, you know. So that's on the finance side. I think on the analysis or the analytics side, that is anyways completely derailing, you know. So if you're good in numbers, if you can play with numbers, nothing like it, because that's really good. So, and when I say analytical, it is both qualitative and quantitative. So having a strong grip, I'm sure you must be having a lot of case study discussions internally. So some of those type of things. So make sure you really enhance, you know, your analytical skills, because that's also very, very important trait that we look for.
Can you briefly tell us about some of the global trends in telecom for this year or in the next 5 years?
Sure. So I think I'm sure there are a lot of people in this room who are doing specialization in telecom, so they'll be, I'm sure, equally knowing about these trends. But just to quickly recap, I think some of the trends that we are seeing with the clients that we deal with across different geographies is one related to big data. I'm sure you must have really heard about big data. That seems to be really catching up in a big way. And some of the telcos that we work with, and we work with telcos both on the B2B and B2C side, they are really grappling with large volume of data, you know, and that's where big data is turning out to be the next big problem for a lot of these telecom operators. So we are actually working on some of those projects wherein we'll get the entire data dump from these telcos, which runs into terabytes of data. We put that data in-house. We apply business intelligence tools on top of it. A lot of statistical techniques are applied on top of it, and then we come up with a lot of predictive and prescriptive trends, you know. So we do a lot of those type of things as well. So big data is one big trend that I see out there in the market. I think the second challenge is which we feel a lot of telcos today are facing is related to the ARPUs, and ARPU, the way the ARPU is really getting down, and a lot of the telco operators are bleeding, not just in India but globally as well. So that's one of the biggest problems that I see a lot of telcos are grappling with, you know, as we speak right now. That's the second thing. The third is around the big trend that we are seeing is a lot of companies are actually now diversifying. So a telecom operator, let's say, who was only into B2C, is today looking into getting into enterprise division, you know, because that's where they feel there is big margin, there is a lot of potential. So we see a lot of these large telecom operators diversifying in a big way, you know. So a company who is into B2B is getting into B2C, enterprise, and so on and so forth, and vice versa as well, which only means that the competition is going to get even more stiffer with each passing day, you know. So that's another trend, you know, that we are seeing out there in the market. And last but not the least relates to consolidation, M&A, because we actually deal a lot on the M&A side as well. And of course, I can't share the specifics, but a lot of the telcos that we deal with, either they plan to exit or they are looking out for a, you know, a buyer or a seller. So there is a lot of that M&A activity happening globally in the telecom space because the market is getting really, really competitive and the margins are really, really getting shrinked, you know. So unless you have deep pockets, unless you are able to invest in capex, you know, it's going to be very tough for a lot of these operators, you know. Even if you look at a lot of operators in India, I'll not take the names, but they are sitting on huge debt. Some of the biggest and the best companies that you can think of may have 100 million subscribers, but but at the end of the day, the kind of debt that they are sitting on will explode one day. And a lot of these companies, as you must have seen, have started exiting the non-core business of theirs so that they can, reduce their debt, which is sitting on their balance sheet. So that's another big trend or big issue that we see out there in the telecom domain.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Abdul from Senior Telecom Batch.
Yeah, Atul.
Sir, as we are talking about big data analytics, so in an organization or in an enterprise, there is a file level, we can say as file level enterprise when it comes to big data analytics. On a level 2, the technology adoption, there is no standard tool available in the market as a global trend, even though the Hadoop technology is available as a free open source. But still, for the predictive analysis, there is no standard tool. How far this, when analyzing the data, what about the privacy concerns, the security of a person or an individual will be handled over there?
Sure. So I think there are two things that you talked about. One is on the privacy of data, and secondly about the applications which are out there in the market. On the privacy of data, I think yes, it was a problem, I would say a couple of years back. It still is a big problem, but now there are various checks and mechanisms which are out there in the market and which clients are adopting to ensure that the privacy of data is maintained. So just to give you an example, now data can be transmitted from various countries to our country or vice versa using various complex and advanced encryption technologies, so which was not there the case a couple of years back. That's one. So I think because of that, a lot of companies today are actually now much more open to share data across geographies. You look at companies like Amazon, Google, they have massive centers in India, right? And they are dealing with large volume of data which is coming from various countries. We never thought that such a trend can exist, and they are doing big amount of stuff related to data analytics based out of their India centers, and it's all global data that they are getting. So yes, it was a problem, but I think with the advancement in the technology, a lot of these security related issues are taken care of. Is it done? I don't think so. I think this is an evolving process, but yes, 3 years back, if you would have asked me this question, I would have said yes, it was a big issue, but probably not today. So that's number one. The second thing you talked about was related to applications, or tools like Hadoop, whether that is so to say a bottleneck that just because one technology is so popular, others may not pick up. Actually, on the contrary, I think it's not a bad trend, because end of the day, there are a lot of new technologies coming up. There are a lot of new open source platforms which are out there in the market. You talk about things like cloud era. I'm sure there are tons and tons of these big data applications and tools out there in the market, which actually is a good thing for the consumer, because consumer get more variety. They can pick and choose depending on the data that they are dealing with, which applications make more sense, So if you ask me, I think that's a good trend. Hadoop, obviously, when you think about big data, Hadoop is synonymous, but I think there are a lot of things happening outside Hadoop as well, and a lot of the other startups are doing great stuff when it comes to big data, so that's where it is. Any other questions or? Great, then I think we'll close the session, and thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for being here, and I wish you all the best for your careers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.